Most people think the birth of heavy metal began with bands like Black Sabbath or Led Zeppelin. Others will point to the thunderous riffs of Deep Purple or the early raw power of Blue Cheer. But what if the real birth of heavy metal actually started with Jimi Hendrix, and not with his famous hit Purple Haze, but another lesser-known track? According to music author and Hendrix historian Brad Tolinski, the roots of heavy metal can be traced to a specific Hendrix recording that few would expect: Manic Depression. Yes, that song, the offbeat, almost jazzy track from Hendrix's 1967 debut album, Are You Experienced? Tolinski, who's spent decades researching Hendrix's work, insists that this one song, not Purple Haze or Voodoo Child, may actually be the missing link between psychedelic rock and heavy metal, and the more you listen to it, the more it starts to make sense. Let's rewind the tape. Are You Experienced hit the world like a bolt of lightning in May 1967. Hendrix was a sensation. His look, his playing, his songwriting. It was like something from another planet. The album was packed with mind-bending songs like Foxy Lady, Hey Joe, and of course, Purple Haze. But buried inside was Manic Depression, a track that didn't chart, didn't get radio play, and never became a single. Yet its structure, tone, and sheer aggression were unlike anything else at the time. And that, says Tolinski, is what makes it so important. Beyond the blues into uncharted territory. Manic Depression is a weird song from the very first second. It doesn't follow traditional 4/4 time. Instead, it's in waltz time, a 3/4 rhythm more commonly used in jazz or folk music than rock and roll. That alone sets it apart. But Hendrix didn't use that rhythm to play something soft or melodic. No, he used it to unleash something heavy, loud, and unsettling. The guitar tone is ferocious. The distort. Ian is thick, raw, and unapologetic. Mitch Mitchell's drumming is chaotic yet precise, and Noel Redding's bass gives it a menacing low end. The lyrics are dark, almost nihilistic. Hendrix sings about emotional turmoil, a love he can't understand, and a rage that feels overwhelming. It's not a love song, it's a psychological explosion. Most rock at the time was still stuck in the blues. Even the heavier stuff, Cream, the Yardbirds, the Stones, it was rooted in the 12-bar blues format. Hendrix broke from that with Manic Depression. He kept the soul of blues but threw away its structure. The result? Something new, something that didn't have a name yet, something that would eventually be called heavy metal. Brad Tolinski points out that Manic Depression is one of the first rock songs to pair odd time signatures with distorted aggression, two traits that would become hallmarks of metal decades later. And Hendrix didn't just play the guitar, he attacked it. The riffs weren't just musical, they were violent. Why it wasn't Purple Haze. Now, most people, when they think Hendrix and heavy, go straight to Purple Haze. It's a classic, it's loud, it's distorted, and it's got that riff. So why doesn't Tolinski credit it as the birth of metal? Because, in his view, Purple Haze is still a psychedelic rock song at heart. It's trippy, melodic, and catchy. It has feedback and fuzz, but it's also playful. It's a song designed to blow your mind, not necessarily your eardrums. Manic Depression, on the other hand, is darker. There's no wink, no smile. It's more raw, more relentless. There's something deeply anxious and desperate in it, and that's what separates it. In fact, if you listen closely, Manic Depression shares more DNA with bands like Black Sabbath than any other Hendrix tune. The relentless rhythm, the emotional intensity, the down-tuned fury, it's all there. Tony Iommi may have put the final stamp on heavy metal, but Hendrix was sketching the blueprint. A forgotten milestone in rock history. So why didn't Manic Depression get the credit it deserved? Why isn't it taught in rock history classes as the start of metal? The answer may lie in timing, and in Hendrix himself. For one, the song never became a single. It was overshadowed by the more popular tracks on Are You Experienced? And Hendrix, for all his genius, was never interested in being labeled. He moved so quickly from one sound to the next that people couldn't keep up. By the time metal began to form as a genre in the early 70s, Hendrix was already gone. He died in 1970 at just 27. Black Sabbath released their debut that same year. Led Zeppelin was already 2 albums in. Hendrix wasn't around to shape or claim this new sound. He just helped create it and then disappeared. Also, heavy metal fans often overlooked Hendrix because of his image. He wore bright colors, played psychedelic festivals, and wrote about love and outer space. Metal fans were more drawn to darkness, doom, and rebellion. Hendrix's music was too broad for that narrow label. But if you strip away the cultural expectations and just listen to the sound of manic depression, you hear the future. The influence we forgot. The ripple effects of manic depression are everywhere, once you start looking. Listen to early Led Zeppelin tracks like Dazed and Confused or Communication Breakdown. You'll hear the same kind of heavy, offbeat riffs. Jimmy Page was famously influenced by Hendrix, calling him one of the greatest musicians to ever walk the earth. Black Sabbath's Tony Iommi has also spoken of Hendrix's influence. In early Sabbath recordings like NIB or Electric Funeral, you can hear the same kind of fuzzy guitar tone and thunderous rhythm that Manic Depression introduced. Even Metallica's Kirk Hammett has cited Hendrix as a key inspiration. While most people link Hammett's playing to Randy Rhoads or Tony Iommi, the expressive screaming solos he plays owe more to Hendrix than anyone else. And then there's the modern progressive metal scene, bands like Tool, Mastodon, and Opeth, who regularly use unusual time signatures, odd meters, and unconventional structures. They owe a debt to Hendrix's willingness to break rhythm rules. What's amazing is that one overlooked song helped crack the foundation of rock music wide open. Manic Depression isn't just a track, it's a time bomb. It didn't explode in 1967, but decades later you can hear its blast radius across generations of music. Jimmy's guitar was already screaming metal. Another important point, Hendrix's gear was ahead of its time. He used fuzz pedals like the Fuzz face to get sounds no one had heard before. He pushed amps to their limit, using overdrive and feedback as instruments themselves. His Marshall stacks created walls of sound that rivaled what Sabbath or Zeppelin would do later. And his technique was pure aggression. He scraped, bent, choked, and even burned his guitar. His solos weren't just musical, they were visceral. That raw intensity, the feeling that the guitar was about to fall apart, is pure metal energy. In Manic Depression, Hendrix doesn't hold back. The solo is like a tantrum. He lets the notes slide and scream, digging into the strings like he's in a fight with them. There's no polish, just fury. That style, uncontrolled, distorted, and emotional, is the core of metal. When Manic Depression first came out, most critics didn't know what to make of it. Some dismissed it as just another psychedelic track. Others didn't understand why Hendrix would choose such an odd rhythm. But looking back now, it's easy to see they missed the bigger picture. They were listening for melody, not impact. They were looking for pop hits, not genre revolutions. And Hendrix was always ahead of the curve. He didn't care about fitting in. He was chasing something deeper. Brad Tolinski believes that if Hendrix had lived longer, he might have led the heavy metal movement himself. Imagine Jimi Hendrix playing alongside Sabbath or Deep Purple in 1971. Imagine him working with Robert Plant or Ozzy Osbourne. The thought alone is staggering. Instead, we're left with echoes, a trail of riffs and rhythms that point back to a song most people have forgotten. So what happens now? Do we rewrite history and say Jimi Hendrix invented heavy metal? Maybe not entirely, but maybe it's time to give Manic Depression the credit it deserves as a key piece of the puzzle. It's not about taking anything away from Sabbath or Zeppelin or Purple. They built metal into what it became. But Hendrix cracked the door open. He dared to play angry, loud, and strange before anyone else dared to call it metal. Next time you listen to Manic Depression, don't think of it as just another Hendrix song. Think of it as the seed of a sound that would one day shake the world. Because sometimes revolutions don't start with a bang. They start with a scream in 3/4 times.